Dude, no. Hello everybody, welcome back to another brand new episode of Business Blaze. This one is Abscam, a cesspool of corruption. I have no idea what this is. I'm not even familiar with it, so maybe Danny asked for this one, or like I came up with it and then forgot. I am quite forgetful. So one thing you should not forget is to purchase the merch. Go to purchasethemerch.co and you can buy something like this smash the dislike button t-shirt, which is possibly something you're going to be considering doing in this video, because I'm going to say things you probably don't like. Let's crack on. Throughout the many what happens here is Danny writes me a script. I shall read the script. Sam, afterwards, our resident memologist, and I can say resident now because I finally trapped him in the basement, he will add some memes and a video shall be made. Let's do it. Throughout the many job interviews I've endured in my life, I was very often asked to list some of my biggest strengths. Job interviews are such bullshit. Like, tell me about your biggest strengths. Tell me about your biggest weaknesses. So, I work too hard. This is like, I always feel like for graduate jobs, and they have these books and they have guides and you can have mock interviews, and they always ask the same questions and you just memorize answers. It's like being in a play. I really feel with those whenever I go to like a job interview. Fortunately not anymore. Maybe someday when I finally get cancelled, but then no one wants to employ me. You just memorize the answers. You be a character that they want you to be. And that seems to work quite well, but it's all bullshit, isn't it? When I was a kid, I've discussed this story before, I worked in a supermarket called Sainsbury's, and I remember going for the job interview there. I must have been like 16 years old. And I go in and they sit me down in this room and they're like, okay, Simon, we're gonna give you a test. What you have to do, just fill out the test to the best of your ability. And I'm like, all right, I mean, I'm not applying for management, I'm gonna be stacking shelves. And so I fill out the test and it's like multiple choice. And it's like these most basic questions you could possibly imagine. Like, if a customer comes into the store and needs help with an item, do you A, tell them to insert that item into their anus? B, be polite and helpful? I'm like, I guess it's B. And then the woman who was interviewing me, like the deputy store manager, comes back in, marks my test and is like, did you cheat on the test? And I'm like, did you like something about knowing the answers or something? And I'm like, no, it was just really easy. And she was amazed. What's with that test? I'm secretly a genius. We've got 2 lines in. Let's do what we're here to do. Smash that dislike. I told you! Purchasethemerch.co. After a while, I settled in on the same 3. Here's Danny's greatest strengths. I'm a punctual timekeeper. I can convincingly pretend to listen to some idiot yapping on for hours and hours. And I'm completely impervious to any form of corruption. I should have said that. Why would you be a great fit for this firm? Oh, I can't be bought. I probably shouldn't have bursted out the first one during all those interviews when I was late because I missed the bus. But that latter point about corruption is completely true. I hope that this is partly because I'm a man of fierce integrity and unswerving virtue, or maybe, Danny, no one has ever offered you enough money. You know? It's like, no, I can't be bought. Danny, it's $50,000. I can be bought. It's like me and Raid Shadow Legends. Like they wouldn't stop. I've told this story before, but if you're new here, Raid Shadow Legends will try to get every YouTuber in the world to be sponsored by their allegedly shitty mobile app. And I got so sick of emailing them, I just said like, I'd like an absolutely absurd amount of money, well into the 5 figures for an ad read. And they were like, no, but we can do this slightly less absurd 5-figure sum. I was like, no, I'm good. But I mean, I can be bought. Just, be a little generous with your boy. But mainly it's because I can't be doing with the stress of getting involved in anything illegal. I guess my example's not illegal. But of course there are examples where it's illegal. I'm sure I've done a few dodgy things in my younger years, just like everyone else, but these days I just enjoy the peace of mind in knowing that there are no crooked skeletons in my cupboard. I wouldn't want the potential threat of exposure and consequences hanging over me every day like an ominous dark cloud of Trump ice water. Oh, if you're new here, there are a ton of references and throwbacks to previous videos which aren't funny if you're new, so I apologize, smash that dislike button. I'm sure that most Business Blaze viewers are equally honest and honorable, except for you, Peter. We all know you're a shifty fuck. But there are plenty of other fiends in this world who would find it harder to resist illegal temptations. If they ever get offered an enormous pot of cash in exchange for a simple dodgy act which seems unlikely to be detected, these people are most likely to shrug and just think, Why not? And this, of course, is the great entrapment dilemma. Should these suckers be punished for taking the tempting bait in a crime that wouldn't even have existed if an organization like the FBI hadn't created it? Well, someone's got to create the crimes, don't they, Danny? Otherwise there'd be no crimes. It's like murder. No, it's not a crime. Someone's got to make it a crime, don't they? It's a dilemma that sat at the heart of one of the biggest ever corruption probes in history. And the weird thing about the Abscam investigation is that it was never even planned. A fairly modest original brief accidentally escalated into something way bigger than anyone could have imagined at the time, and it all started when the paths of two very different people from the Bronx collided in 1978. I have no idea what Abscam is. It's gotta be seems like it's been pretty huge. I guess I just missed it. Mel Weinberg, more commonly known as just Mel, spent most of the 1950s and 1960s trying to swindle people out of their money via increasingly dodgy tactics. He started off working in his dad's store, which sold plate glass, but they had an unusual approach to drumming up new business. Instead of shoving flyers through the doors or placing ads in the local newspaper, young Mel would go around smashing the windows of every nearby store so that they needed to buy replacements. It's like, oh yeah. Oh, it's like a protection racket, isn't it? You'd think someone may have cottoned on when every store in a 5-mile radius, except for the plate glass store, was getting their windows smashed on a regular basis, but apparently not. I suppose it was the Bronx. I'd smash if I was this guy, I'd like smash my own window in occasionally. Just to be like, yeah, look, me too. Except I get to replace it, for free. In later years, Mel tried a few little side hustles of his own. He once managed to sell 5,000 pairs of socks that had been produced with no soles, and he passed off a load of cheap crap glass as expensive Italian stuff just by slapping Made in Italy stickers all over it. Mel was even happy to scam his own cousin, and then threatened him with a fictitious mob contract killing if he ever dared to open his mouth. Holy Mel. I'm glad I'm not related to you dickhead. But eventually, Mel Weinberg settled down into the lucrative business of international banking and investments. That's quite a shift. It's like, what were you before? I was a small-time crook. What are you now? I'm an investment banker. I'm gonna get the feeling there's something crooked going on here. I don't know why. It's probably because this Mel guy's a bit of a shifty f***. He set up London Investors, which was based in lavish offices in Melville, Long Island, and arranged million-dollar loans for international banks for business people with poor credit. Or at least, that's what his clients were told. In reality, they stumped up a few grand for appraisal and processing fees, and were then left waiting for months and months until they finally received a rejection letter from an international bank that didn't exist. It's like the Nigerian scam, the, hey, dear Simon, or normally they don't get the right name right, dear sir, dear Peter, I am the Prince Turbo of Nigeria, and I've got $17 million just waiting in a bank account for you. All you gotta do is
suck this cock good. You're gonna suck this cock clean.
All you gotta do is send me $200 processing fees. I was like, oh, all right, Prince. Here we go. Don't do that, those are scams. Yep, it was a particularly ambitious advance fee scam, which managed to ensnare some celebrity victims, including cheesy Las Vegas entertainer Wayne Newton. Never heard of him, no surprises there. Mel was so good that he even managed to scam some people twice, and it's believed that many of his victims remained blissfully unaware that they'd ever been swindled at all. For the time being, at least, crime was paying rich dividends for Mel Weinberg. These days, the Google reviews would do him out, wouldn't they? Because someone would write on Google reviews, yeah, I applied for a loan, didn't get it, and then everyone else would say the same thing. Be like, oh, he's taking our money, isn't he? Whereas back in the day, you probably don't want to talk to your friends about needing to get a loan from, because you can't get a loan from a regular bank or something. Meanwhile, another Bronx native, John F. Good, had taken a slightly different career path. After serving in the Navy, John F. Good had followed in his father's footsteps and joined the FBI, originally serving in Illinois and Texas, before settling down for a while in New York City in a supervisor's. By 1977, John was keen to get away from the desk job and back into the thick of the action. Sounds like an action movie. So he transferred to a new role as senior resident agent at the FBI's Long Island office. But he found to his dismay that he wasn't really back in the thick of the action at all. Not much exciting was going down at the Long Island office other than tracking down draft dodgers and soldiers who had gone AWOL during the Vietnam War. Yeah, it's got to be pretty boring. It's like, who are our criminals? People who don't want to go off and die in a war. Ah, those bastards. John F. Good wanted to reel in some bigger fish and catch some proper criminals. He didn't even particularly care what breed of criminal. Fraudsters. Well, if he doesn't care what breed, go after the draft dodgers. Come on. Jesus, John. Fraudsters, drug smugglers, art thieves, Heineken drinkers. OG Business Blaze reference? Anything would do, just so long as he didn't have to hunt down yet another poor guy who hadn't really fancied the idea of getting shot in Vietnam. Danny and I, same page. But John felt that he might need a bit of help from the other side of the law in putting his new plans together, and that help finally popped up in the shape of Mel Weinberg. Mel's good fortunes had started to slide by 1977 when he went a scam too far. His bogus investment company had ripped off a real estate guy from Pittsburgh to the tune of a few grand, and unlike many of Mel's victims, this guy wasn't prepared to just let it lie. Yeah, dude, how long are you gonna go by before, like, someone realizes what's up, looks up the international bank, and I know this was harder back in the day, being like, oh, that's not a bank, that guy ripped me off, and you just happen to be a bit of a hard man who's gonna go up Mel Weinberg or whatever his name is. Instead, he alerted the FBI. Oh, I thought he was just gonna go beat him up, but I assumed he was a gangster or something. He basically went to the FBI, which led to Mel getting indicted for wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. That seems light. 3 years in prison? Seems light for America. Like, fraud and stuff. This guy's just like, yeah, 20 years. It's like, I mean, don't commit fraud, but that's a bit heavy, isn't it? Of course, Mel's base of operations was in John F. Good's neck of the woods in Long Island, and a routine memo had been sent to his office. As John finished off his blueberry pancakes and skimmed through the memo, why is he eating blueberry pancakes? A light bulb smashed to bits in his head like a Bronx store window. Ba-da-boom-boom! The FBI could strike a deal with this hustler, then Mel could turn out to be a native guide in an undercover operation, leading John to those bigger white-collar fish that they wanted to fry. Mel Weinberg must have taken a while to chew over the options that were now being presented to him. Option A, serve 3 years in prison. Option B, get the sentence cut to probation in exchange for taking a job with the FBI as an undercover agent, which would pay about $3,000 a month, plus big bonuses when he got results. I wonder which one I would choose. Although option B does give you the potential of getting murdered by someone, you know, who just doesn't like you talking. Option A, you just go to prison for 3 years and it all goes away. Like, I think it's harder than Danny makes out. Mel eventually decided to plump for the latter option, and the seeds of Abscam were planted in the Long Island soil. The initial remit of the investigation was fairly small and was only awarded a total budget of $32,000. There was no hint of entrapment in the original plan of recovering stolen art. What does this have to do with Mel and lending money? I'm so confused. John wanted Mel to act the role of intermediary to a rich potential buyer who was interested in splashing out a fortune on pieces of art that had gone walkabout from the galleries. And they got quite imaginative about the whole thing. Mel was given the freedom to set up a completely bogus company in Long Island, Abdul Enterprises Limited, which was owned by a fictional sheik from the Arab Emirates called Kambir Abdul Rahman. What is going on? The idea was that the sheiks were looking to invest their fabulous wealth into stolen art. So what sort of investments are you looking for? Some index funds, stolen art, the huge. Mel Weinberg was the dodgy, foul-mouthed, fast-talking, cigar-munching middleman who would help set up the deals with the podgy criminal underbelly of New York. This was round about the same time the name Abscam was first coined for the investigation. Although the term is now officially understood to be an abbreviation for Abdul Scam, that wasn't the original intention. The FBI had initially meant it to stand for Arab Scam, but following a later complaint by the American Arab Relations Committee that the term could be considered quite offensive, a judge diplomatically suggested that the name was clearly meant to refer to the Abdul Scam. Sure it was. Abdul Enterprises looked on paper like an authentic company, which was even backed by a major bank who would happily vouch for Abdul's wealth. Yeah, when you got the FBI behind you, I'm sure you can fake all this shit, right? It's not like, you know, just trying to fake tons of money in a bank. The FBI can make it happen. It's the FBI. I've seen movies. And just to add to that extra layer of credibility, Mel even recruited one of his gang to take on the role of Abdul Rahman whenever required, so that the crooks had a chance to hobnob with the big cheese himself. Actually, this took a few attempts to get right. One of the first guys to play the role didn't speak any Arabic at all. It sounds as if they just stuck him in makeshift Arab rolls and headscarves and hoped for the best. But eventually, after they'd ironed out these early wrinkles in the robes, Mel had come up with a credible team of characters ready to do business. And the early results were better than expected. It sounds like, I know I don't really know what the rules of entrapment are, but it's like, you can't encourage people to commit crimes and then arrest them for committing crimes, right? That seems a bit dodgy. This sounds like exactly what's happening. As Mel himself would later testify in court, we had a big honeypot, and all the flies came to it. Several other thieves were arrested, and a couple of valuable missing pieces were recovered, which had been missing in action since 1966 and had a total value of over $1 million. At least well, they're recovering some art. This is fantastic. For his part, Mel got an extra $10,000 bonus, although he would often complain that the FBI were being a bit miserly with his salary. Dude, you were going to go to prison for 3 years, you should be working for free, and also $10,000 in 1970s money is like way more money today. It's got to be like 70 grand. Following his early success, Abscam cast its net a bit wider as Abdul Enterprises appeared to be getting a bit more ambitious. Abdul was now interested in snapping up casino licenses in Atlantic City, along with titanium mines and applications for permanent residency in the States. What is going on? He was also making it clear that he was happy to dish out big loans to the mob with a bit of interest, naturally, as Islamic laws prevented him from doing this on his home turf. Yeah, because as soon as you're not home, that's fine. You don't have to obey the religious rules when you're in another country. Why would you? Obviously not. A big turning point in the investigation occurred when Mel hooked up with a convicted fraudster called William Rosenberg, who had already spent time in the slammer for stock fraud. This was shortly after New Jersey had just approved a referendum to legalize gambling again in Atlantic City, signaling the end of a ban that had spanned the best part of a century. Mel informed Rosenberg that his client Abdul was interested in investing $100 million in new casinos, which would help turn Atlantic City into the Vegas of the East. There was just one little niggle. If the wealthy sheik was going to invest so much dough into the venture, he wanted a cast-iron guarantee that Abdul Enterprises would be granted a gambling license, otherwise he might end up as the proud owner of a string of particularly flashy laundrettes. Yeah, okay, so he's entrapping someone. I mean, there's gonna be a bribe at some point for some city official, but the thing doesn't even exist. This doesn't seem right. Like, you can't encourage people. You can't be the government. Can you? I don't know where I stand morally on this. I don't think you should be encouraging people to commit crimes and then arresting them for committing the crimes. Right? Or maybe that's not what happened. I haven't read this, so let's crack on. William Rosenberg told Mel not to worry because he was on very good terms with the mayor of Camden, New Jersey. And the mayor was as bent as a butcher's hook. I see where this is going. I saw where this is going because it's blindingly obvious. Angelo Errichetti was an influential Democratic politician who at the time was serving as both mayor of Camden and in the New Jersey Senate. A meeting was arranged between Mel and Angelo on the 1st of December 1978 in which Mel presented the mayor with an ice-breaking gift from his mysterious employer. A priceless, gleaming tribal dagger. Well, I say priceless, but Mel had actually just picked it up from the local flea market for $2.75. Oh no. Angelo made it clear that he could arrange casino licenses and pretty much anything else that Abdul desired in exchange for about $400,000 in bribes. He's remarkably straight up about it. Yeah, no, that's gonna cost you 400 grand. Is that some sort of governmental fee? No, that's my bribe. During the first encounter, Angelo revealed, "I'll be your rabbi. I'll give you Atlantic City. Without me, you do nothing." So not only is he like, yeah, no, it'll be 400 grand, and if you don't give me the bribe money, you're f***ed. You won't, your casinos will be worthless. I will sabotage the shit out of your application. Allegedly. It had probably never dared to cross his mind that the whole meeting might have been secretly videotaped. And you can't blame him, really. This was 1978, and it was the first ever time that secret videotaped conversations would be used as legal evidence by the FBI. Yeah, but they had audio stuff before that, right? They were definitely recording stuff on audio. Mel found Angelo to be a strangely likable figure. He said of him, he was a nice guy, but he was just an unbelievable crook. He had no fear. He didn't beat around the bush. He just wanted to make money. FBI agent John F. Good was probably quite keen on Angelo too. Almost by complete accident, the mayor of Camden had turned the initially modest white-collar investigation into a full-blown probe into congressional corruption, and Angelo was quite happy to open all the doors and reveal exactly which members of Congress were on the take. Oh my god, this is exploding. This is interesting. It's like how crime works, right? You catch the one little guy, and you get him to turn on his boss, and then you get that guy to turn on his boss, and the next thing you know, you're taking down Congress. Holy shit. It's like a movie. How high does it go? Over the next couple of years, Mel and his team of fictional characters would meet up with a whole string of Congress members, nearly all of whom were Democrats, but they did have a majority back then. Meetings and parties were held aboard expensive yachts and chartered jets in which Mel and Abdul would thrash out bribes and narcotic deals and counterfeit money schemes and all kinds of crazy shit with the finest upstanding representatives of the day, all of whom were blissfully unaware that these special moments were being recorded for prosperity. Again, this doesn't feel right. You shouldn't be entrapping these guys. They should be committing the crimes, and then you catch them. Don't be encouraging people to commit crimes. and then be like, you committed a crime. Doesn't feel right. I don't know. These guys, who knows? One of them was Michael Myers. Not the Wayne's World star or the troubled throat slasher from the Halloween films. This Michael Myers was the Philadelphia Democrat who was captured on film uttering the immortal words, "I'm going to tell you something real, simple and short. Money talks in this business and bullshit walks. And it works the same way down in Washington." In return for guaranteeing Abdul a green card and looking after some of his US investments, Michael Myers walked away from the hotel in the JFK airport carrying a briefcase stuffed with $50,000 in $100 bills. I guess this was the 1970s, but that does seem quite cheap for just getting a green card. Welcome to America! Another one was Representative John W. Jenrette Jr., who agreed to introduce a bill which would allow a wealthy Arab to immigrate to the United States. He was caught on film saying, "I got larceny in my blood. I'll take it in a goddamn minute." Although he originally demanded $150,000, he ended up agreeing to make do with just $50,000. But perhaps the biggest fish of all was Senator Harrison H. Williams. Harrison had served more than 2 decades in the US Senate, and the Democrat had previously been celebrated as a champion of social welfare and pension rights. It looked for a while as if Abscam were wasting their time on this one. He was filmed rejecting a proposed bribe from Abdul, but the FBI seemed quite determined to ensnare Harrison A. Williams one way or another, and they eventually struck titanium. Harrison was promised a hidden 18% interest in a titanium mine in Virginia, a stake which would officially be owned by his lawyer. If the senator used his powerful influence to steer big government contracts to the mine, Abdul would throw $100 million at the venture. Harrison appeared on film to be much more open to this new offer. As the 1970s drew to a close, so did the Abscam investigation, as the whole story was leaked to the press at the beginning of 1980, which would have made any further probing quite tricky. Besides, the FBI had by this time promised hundreds of millions of dollars in bribes that they couldn't actually deliver on. In total, the FBI had already spent about $500,000 on this $32,000 investigation, and Mel Weinberg had walked away with around $150,000 for his efforts. Mel made out of this like a bandit. It was probably quite fun. He didn't have to go to prison, and he made $150,000 in 1970s money, which is a lot today. But it's fair to say the Congress wasn't entirely happy when the story first hit the front page of the New York Times. Yeah, because they were like, you entrapped my friends, who never accepted a bribe in their life until you offered them an absolutely wild-ass amount of money. Although some members of Congress were reportedly embarrassed about this leaking cesspool of corruption, others argued that Abscam was a rogue investigation which went way beyond the FBI's remit, who had recently faced inquiries from Congress into alleged brutality and abuse. To say I'm kind of siding with the Congress on this one. US Attorney Edward Plaza declared that the FBI shouldn't be relying on a convicted fraudster to get results, and even claimed that the whole thing could be a scam within a scam. Well, he did do very well out of it. I also don't think that it's wrong that they can use him to conduct this investigation. That was like the most legitimate part. It's like, let him out of jail, work for you guys, get something cool done. What's the problem? I don't understand. He said Weinberg was scamming the government's officials trying to monitor the operation. Undercover operations are a necessity, but you have to monitor them. You don't just turn someone like Weinberg loose. But he was being kind of monitored, wasn't he? Meanwhile, public opinion was divided, with many applauding the FBI's attempts to expose corruption at the highest level, while others felt the Bureau had stepped way over the line with their entrapment tactics. I get it, I get why they did it, I think they stepped over the line.
They must be punished!
It can be both. And this brings us back to the great entrapment dilemma, which still provokes fierce debate today. So the entrapment dilemma isn't about, like, whatever I thought it was about originally. It's about whether the police should entrap people or not. Whenever I hear the word entrapment, I often think of the murky UK press trying to ensnare sports stars into accepting drugs or throwing a game in a bid to generate a front page story. And in those situations, I can't help but feel the press should be a bit more focused on reporting the news instead of trying to create it. Yes, agreed. If you're doing that, you should also, that should be a crime as well. Encouraging people to commit crimes? Surely that should also be a crime. Though this is an entirely different kettle of casino chips. In such a long and sprawling investigation, there are bound to be elements of it that worked, and perhaps elements of the investigation that are a bit harder to defend. Yes, not black and white, is it? If the principal law enforcement agency of the United States were able to demonstrate that multiple members of Congress were willing to accept bribes at the drop of a hat, I reckon that's a matter of public interest. But maybe they shouldn't have pursued some of their leads with quite such a dogged determination. For example, they should have arguably let Senator Harrison A. Williams off the hook when he originally refused to accept a bribe, instead of continuing to hound him for months with increasingly lucrative offers. Yes! Then again, maybe the end result was justified in showing that even a previously respectable senator had a price. Everybody has a price! I mean, not everybody, but most people have a price.
Maybe this will refresh your memory. I don't know, it's still kind of hazy.
How about this?
Yeah, I remember.
The faintly reassuring news is that not everyone in Congress was a crook. For example, John F. Good freely admits that Abscam aggressively chased Senator Larry Pressler from South Dakota into accepting a $50,000 bribe in exchange for a bill which would secure residency for 2 arrows, but Larry Pressler point-blank refused all illegal advances.
Just do it!
Well, yeah, because they didn't offer him bloody $18 million, did they? There's a lot of difference between a year's salary and $18 million. The Washington Post proudly declared on its front page that thanks to the FBI's undercover sting operation, there now exists incontrovertible evidence that one senator would not be bought. Way to go, Larry. Again, my argument about how much is offered still stands. Sadly, one senator, 6 representatives, and 5 other government officials paid the price for their temptations and were convicted of bribery and conspiracy. The flamboyant mayor of Camden, yeah, that guy, I mean, he was corrupt from the beginning. He was like, yeah, it'll cost you $400,000. There was no entrapment. It was like, well, there was, because they were like, we need this. But it wasn't so... See, this is why it's complicated, because that seems like, okay, that guy was crooked. But the other guys, yeah. Angelo Errichetti served 3 years in prison and later worked as a consultant in real estate. Representative Michael Myers served 21 months in prison, but remained indignant about the whole Abscam operation. What was Michael Myers up to? Oh yeah, he was the guy who got the green card for the guy for $50,000. Again, yeah, that seems fair. 3 years in prison. 21 months in prison. The man who accepted the briefcase containing $50,000 later whined, "It is just outrageous to go after people who have never done anything wrong. I feel I didn't do anything wrong, and if anybody offers me $25,000 this afternoon, I will take it." Wait, so you got caught for corruption? And then you're like, yeah, no, I'd have taken half that amount and I still would. You have to go to prison, dude. Learn your lesson. Just a couple of months prior to writing the script, Michael Myers has been charged with fraudulently stuffing the ballot boxes for specific candidates in primary elections, bribery of an election official, falsification of records, voting more than once in federal elections, and obstruction of justice. Oh, Michael, allegedly you're going to prison again. Dude. No, like that original thing, like the 50 grand, I could be like, okay, yeah, it was that entrapment thing, that kind of sucks. You're a bad guy. Learn your lesson. Don't then say, I'd do it again, and then do it again and do worse crimes. Why, Michael? Why? Meanwhile, Senator Harrison A. Williams resigned from his seat to avoid facing the inevitable expulsion, which would have made him the first senator since the Civil War to be expelled from his seat. Instead, he had to make do with the first senator in 80 years, being imprisoned, serving 2 years in the cooler. Was this the guy with the 18% share and 100 million for that mine? I feel a bit bad for that guy, because he was just so hardcore bribed. Oh, yeah, it was. Okay, so he went 2 years in prison. His later request for a presidential pardon from Bill Clinton was refused, and Harrison continued to protest that he was a victim of FBI misconduct until his death in 2001. It's worth noting that at least one linguistics expert believes that the FBI's video footage is far from conclusive, and that the lead juror in the trial now claims that had more evidence been made available at the time, he would not have found Harrison guilty. I'm feeling a bit bad for Harrison. John F. Good left the FBI in 1986 to become a private investigator, while Mel Weinberg stuck to the straight and narrow right up until his death in 2017, having led what he felt to be a charmed life. Yeah, no kidding, dude. You did some crimes, you didn't go to prison, you got paid for the stuff you did for the FBI, and then you went and had a regular life. Good for you. He received another $25,000 when he sold the rights to his life story for a project that evolved into the 2013 movie American Hustle. I've seen that! Although the film was only very loosely based on real events. Abdul Rahman became the richest Arab in Atlantic City before falling to his death while scrambling around a titanium mine in Virginia. But one of the most notable consequences of the whole Abscam scandal were the new guidelines which Congress forced the US Attorney General into issuing in 1981, which make it harder for the FBI to investigate an elected official without being hampered by red tape and getting approval from a review committee and jumping through hoops of fire. Yeah, that's definitely not just in their self-interest. It's like there was this big investigation into Congress. Congress has decided that there will be no more big investigations into Congress. That's more corrupt than the corruption in this story.
You betray the law!
Allegedly. In other words, Abscam may have succeeded in the clumsy and unintended exposure of massive corruption in Congress. Thank you, Danny. Yes, same page. But in a time where money now plays a more powerful role in Congress than ever before, Congress long ago made quite sure that an operation like Abscam could never happen again. This has been Business Blaze. I have been your boy with the blaze. Why not pick up a merch item if you like it? There's the smash the dislike button. There's other stuff as well. There's the allegedly t-shirt. There's, oh my god, I have a glorious new mug. A glorious new mug. I'm gonna get this for you. Hold on. Some absolute legend made, can you guys see that? I'll hold it back a little bit more, there we go. Some absolute legend made a mug that is it says Blaze, but it's designed to look like the Enron logo. I love it. You can get this, and there's a little ETA's Wilson face down there where the R would be. This is so great. Thank you so much, you absolute legend. You can buy this in the merch store. You can, there's also shirts and hoodies with it as well if you want that. Thank you for watching.